Hi, welcome to today's episode on Fast Intelligent Care. We're going to talk about mobile chairs, or also known as princess chairs, regency chairs, or day chairs. These are chairs that are beneficial for clients that have complex needs, such as complex postural presentations, pressure care needs, and clients that are predominantly hoist transferred. In today's episode, we'll go through some key questions you can ask during your seating assessment, what are some assessment tools that you can use, and what are some of the chair features that you get with your mobile chairs, and why do they matter? Let's start with what are the key questions to ask during your assessment. So we want to start with looking at the big picture. So when we're looking at seating, it's not just about the chair, but we look at the person, we look at the environment, and we look at what are the functions, or what is the occupation that we want to allow for this client. So using also our PEO model, person, environment, occupation, to make sure that it's a very holistic assessment. So here are a few questions that could be beneficial for your seating assessment. So we want to know what type of transfer method our client uses and how we can use the chair to support them to do that transfer. So this could be someone that is doing a sit to stand transfer, a side transfer, or a hoist transfer. With our mobile chairs, most of the time your clients are going to be hoist transferred, as your standard recliner chairs are usually for your clients that are able to do a sit to stand transfer or are using a sit to stand transfer aid. Now the reason for that is because our recliner chairs are usually restricted to one area of the house or facility, whereas your mobile chairs can be moved around into different areas. So that allows a client that is being hoist transferred to stay in a chair and be able to access different areas of their facility or the house without having to transfer into another seating system like a wheelchair. So they still have a comfortable, supportive chair, but they're able to have access to all of those different environments. Then we want to know what is their posture, what is their postural presentation, can they support their trunk, or do they have trunk control, do they have head control, can they stay upright or sit upright independently, or do they need postural supports, do they have any asymmetries in their spine. So we want to know what postural presentations our client has, and we want to know, is it reducible or non-reducible. So reducible means I can get someone into that ideal posture, we can get them in neutral, their spine, we can get their pelvis, their shoulders, their head, neck, all in neutral, and we have the ability to keep someone in that position with, maybe we can use our hands or some postural supports. But if we have someone that has a fixed or non-reducible posture, it means that we can't push them into, or we can't get them into that neutral posture. They have a fixed posture, so we just want to accommodate or support the posture where it is right now and don't want it to get worse. We don't want to be pushing someone into a neutral posture if their body physically doesn't allow for it. So really important to know that. Then we want to know what are the different mechanisms that we need. So do we need independent leg rests, independent back rests? Do we need forward tilt? Do we need tilt in space? And there's a few different conditions or situations that we will require those different mechanisms for. So if we have someone that has lymphedema, so swelling, especially in their legs, we would want to have an independent leg rest. So if a client wants to be able to go onto their porch and they want to sit outside and they want to be able to have postural supports, good pressure care in their seating system, we want to make sure that our chair is able to do that. Our chair is able to go through narrow doorways or our standard door frames. We want to make sure that it can go over whatever surfaces we want to access. So we might look at the caster size, and then we also look at the maneuverability of the chair, not just with the caster size, but is there brakes on my casters that can help to have the caregivers move the chair easily without it being a strain on them. So this could be your directional casters or your casters that allow you to pivot the chair instead of twisting your spine trying to move the chair around. So really want to know, how is this chair going to be moving within my client's environment and where? Then we also want to know how long is this client going to be sitting in this chair. So is this something that they are going to sit in for long periods of time, where we need to look at things like your tilt in space and backward recline and leg elevation to be able to redistribute pressure or change their position so they're not just sitting in one position the whole day. We want to look at our pressure care or pressure care cushion. So if we're having someone sitting in the chair for a very long period, we want to make sure that the cushion gives sufficient pressure care support. This is also where we ask the question, does the client have a risk of developing pressure injury? What is the extent of that risk? Is it a high risk client, medium risk, low risk? Does the person currently have a pressure injury, and where is that pressure injury? We want to make sure we know the extent of that pressure injury as well. So what stage of pressure injury is it? Stage 1, 2, 3, or 4? We want to make sure that our pressure care cushion is appropriate for that grading. We want to make sure that if someone has a high risk of pressure injuries, that we have the ability to change our pressure care supports. So if we have someone that's at a high risk of developing a pressure injury but doesn't currently have one, we might not straight up go for a alternating air cushion. We might start with foam, but we want to then have the ability to upgrade our pressure care cushion if they do develop a pressure injury because they have that high risk. And then we also want to look at what is someone's cognitive function. We want to make sure we know if this client has the ability to use the handset control, because you can get mobile chairs that are manual or powered. If they're powered, they typically have a rechargeable battery and a handset, and then the client can independently adjust their position. Or you could have the manual one where it is gas struts. So it almost looks like your bike handles, gas struts that allow you to do backwards recline, tilt in space, forward tilt, or even leg elevation. But we want to make sure that we know if the client is going to be safe to operate it. So let's say the client does have good cognitive function. We can give them that independence for repositioning themselves or redistributing pressure with the handset. If we have a client that has, let's say, dementia, limited cognitive function, or cognitive limitations, we might rather have a gas strut where the gas struts are at the back of the chair so the client doesn't have access to them to accidentally use them incorrectly. The family or the caregivers will then be able to reposition the client. Next, we'll go through our seating toolkit. So we'll go through some assessment tools that we could use to ensure that we're doing a holistic assessment for our clients that are looking at using a mobile chair. So because we are looking at how someone is transferring, we could use the FIM, or functional independence measure, which is an assessment that we use to look at quite a lot of different activities of daily living, but we could use it for one of the components, which is someone's transfer ability. So we're looking at how independent are they with transfers and how much support they need to be able to do a transfer. Then we look at someone's posture. So this could be when you're doing your mat evaluation, when you're doing your assessment of someone's posture. This could be where you're looking at someone's alignment. So is their head, neck, hips, pelvis, is that all in alignment? We look if there's any of those asymmetries. We try and find out if it is a reducible or non-reducible posture. And we try and figure out if someone needs postural supports in terms of accessories as well as in terms of the mechanisms of the chair. Then we also want to look at someone's pressure injury risk. So there's a lot of pressure injury risk assessment tools out there, like your Braden, your Waterloo, your Purpose T tool. They do look at different factors, so definitely make sure that whenever you are choosing a risk assessment tool, that you are still adding in your own clinical reasoning and making sure that any factors that aren't within that assessment tool, that you're still asking those questions. An example of that could be someone's history of having a pressure injury, if they have current pressure injuries, and making sure that you know what stage of pressure injury that is as well. And then we want to make sure that we are doing a seating trial so they can feel if it's comfortable for them, if they're able to operate the handset, if the postural supports are sufficient, if the chair can interact well with the environment that they're in. we want to make sure that we do that with, in some cases, an in-home trial. So we might end up doing a trial in the showroom, we might do a trial at home as well, but we want to make sure that we definitely trial our chairs as well. And then we can also use pressure mapping to see where there is increased pressure. If there's areas, let's say we do have someone that has a pelvic obliquity, so one hip is higher than the other, the one that's lower is possibly going to have more pressure because now it's not evenly spread. So if we know that there's more pressure on one IT or one sitting bone, we know that we need to look at our pressure care cushion. We might need to build up one side so we can rather spread the pressure. Then we want to look at cognition. We want to make sure we understand if a client is able to safely operate a handset. Now let's talk about some features in your mobile chairs and why they matter or what their clinical benefits are. So we can have tilt in space, backrest recline. We could have different types of backrests, so postural backrests or just standard waterfall recliner type backrests. We could have rigid laterals. We could have different pressure care cushions. There's different armrest types, so drop down or swing away armrests. We could have a angle adjustable foot plate. We could have adjustable dimensions in the seat in terms of seat width, seat depth, seat height. We'll have casters on our chair because it is a mobile chair. And we could also have things like tray tables and 4-point pelvic positioning belts. Then we also look at different pressure care cushions and how we can use them. So if we have that client that doesn't have a pressure injury, we might be fine with just using the standard foam that's in the chair. But if we have that client that has a high risk of pressure injuries or has a pressure injury, can we take out the foam and add in a more advanced pressure care cushion? Being able to integrate a seat cushion into the chair is a really good feature to have in your mobile chairs because it does allow you to be able to step up pressure care as the client's needs change, or kind of future proof. So if the client does develop a pressure injury, I don't have to worry that my chair is not going to be supportive enough. I don't have to worry about having to put a pressure cushion on top of the seat, which is not ideal because it adds extra height. So it might disrupt the seat height. It might move around, so it might be unstable. It might be something that is going to bunch up and actually cause pressure points in certain areas. So ideally we want to have the seat cushion integrated into the chair. When we do have a leg rest for a client that is in a mobile chair, typically these chairs are going to be a lot higher because they have these big casters underneath them. So your client's feet aren't going to be touching the floor, which is not ideal. If you're sitting in the chair, there's going to be more pressure going through the thighs and the buttocks because your feet are now dangling. So we're not spreading the pressure, the feet aren't taking some of that load. So we want to then have a foot plate added onto our leg rest. And we also want to make sure that if my client has a foot drop or plantar flexed foot, so that's where the feet are turned downwards, we do have the need for a leg rest that can change its angle to match what the angle is for the person's foot. So if we do have the feet turned downwards and we have a 90-degree foot plate, what ends up happening is that the front, by the toes, the front area of the foot is taking all the pressure. And we want to then rather have a negative foot plate angle, so the foot plate's turned downwards. So going from 90 degrees, we're opening it up maybe to 100, 110, and we're now having the foot plate be in contact with the whole foot. So in contact with the heel and with the foot bridge and spreading the pressure over a larger area. A common myth with our mobile chairs or princess chairs is that it is unnecessary if someone already has a wheelchair, which is very incorrect, because if you think of yourself who's completely mobile, who doesn't need a wheelchair, we don't sit in the same chair the whole day. We go from our bed into a chair in the dining room, then we go into a desk chair, and then we go onto a couch or an armchair. We're not sitting in the same seat the whole day. So why do we expect our clients to just have two options, which is either they're in bed or in the wheelchair? So if they're not comfortable in their wheelchair, they've sat in it for a couple of hours, they need to go lie in bed. What the mobile chair does is it allows someone to be able to increase their social participation. It can help increase their independence, and it can also help clients to feel more comfortable and actually reduce falls risks as well. So let's do a quick recap of today's episode. So we went through key questions to ask when you're assessing someone for a mobile chair. We looked at some assessment tools, as well as some chair features, what their clinical benefits are, or why they matter. And then we debunked a very common myth with mobile chairs, which is a myth that you don't need a mobile chair or a princess chair if you have a wheelchair. Stay tuned for part 2 on mobile chairs and postural supports. We'll go through some of the postural accessories and how they can support different postural presentations. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you had any experience with mobile chairs, these different accessories or mechanisms? And are there any assessment tools that you like using to make sure that you're doing a very holistic assessment for your client?